You know, I come on here and talk a lot of shit about New York City sports in particular and football, but the last thing that anybody ever wants to see is somebody get hurt. Somebody especially like Saquon Barkley, who has generational talent to without question be the best running back in football, above all else, feared to have a torn ACL. Now, for those of you that don't know, that is the whole season, without question, if that's a torn ACL, and that's a devastating injury. Like I said, we come on here and we do a lot of jokes and stuff. I saw a tweet from Lindsey Jones that said she counted 40 players that were hurt yesterday, some worse than others. And I just want to wish all of those players a speedy recovery, because injuries, again, we love sports, but we never want to see anybody get hurt. We are going to review NFL Week 2, a lot of crazy games, crazy comebacks, unbelievable stuff. I was going to do a charismatic intro and something over the top, but obviously the injuries happened and I didn't know that it was really appropriate. NFL Week 2 full review. Stay right here. I have no idea how I'm supposed to start this. After what we witnessed yesterday, I want somebody to sit here and tell me how I'm supposed to start this review. Do I talk about Saquon Barkley's injury? Do I talk about the Falcons choking for the second time since the Super Bowl? Do I talk about all of the other injuries, which are not funny? None of these injuries are funny, by the way, and I'm trying to make a mention of that. Do I talk about the Bills, Josh Allen dominating? I don't know where I'm supposed to start. I'm going to go over all the games as I always do, but I genuinely don't know where I'm supposed to start with all of this, everything that has happened yesterday, the stat sheets, the injuries, the crazy games, the winners. I mean, for the love of God, how many times does Harrison Butker have to kick a 58-yard field goal for the game to be over? Justin Herberts' debut was great. I mean, it took all of 1 week for Tyrod Taylor to be benched. They didn't even waste any time, they said, after that game against who they played last week, Cincinnati. After that game against Cincinnati, bench. Look at this. What else do I have here? The Baltimore doing what they do. And I think, honestly, Cam Newton, I could sit here and tell you the Patriots are probably very happy with Cam Newton because he's been great so far. They went toe-to-toe with Seattle. Cam Newton went toe-to-toe with Mr. Legendary man himself, Russell Wilson. Okay, the Eagles did absolutely terrible. Drew Lock got hurt. Not his fault. Got hurt. I mean, and the craziest part about it is that there's another game tonight. Now, tonight on paper, before I get into New Orleans and Vegas, I mean, I don't really, Josh Jacobs, I'm always interested to see him play football. But outside of that, I have no reason to believe the Saints would lose this game. Michael Thomas needs a big game because he was invisible last week. He may as well not even have shown up on the field last week, okay? Because he was invisible. But we're going to talk about a guy that needed a big game and a team that needed a big game, and that is Thursday Night Football. That is the Bengals and the Browns. Now, real quick, I want to talk about something. Why is Joe Burrow throwing the football 61 times? Maybe that's something that got you 7 touchdowns in a college game, but that doesn't necessarily usually work in the NFL. The Bengals and Browns, the Battle of Ohio. As far as I'm concerned, both teams in Ohio have nothing to battle over because neither of them are good. But Joe Burrow certainly has potential. Baker Mayfield, well, you know how I feel about him. The final stat line was 35-30. Cleveland won this game. Odell Beckham Jr., who's been invisible since he left the New York Giants, had a decent game. 4 receptions for 74 yards. In all honesty, a game against Cincinnati, Odell Beckham should have had 150 yards, and he should have had 3 touchdowns. I mean, for the love of God, Cincinnati doesn't have a defense. So that's how I feel about that. One of the things I want to mention, Joe Burrow, again, 61 times he threw the damn ball. Joe Burrow had a good game despite that. A lot of people are going to say he had 25 missed footballs, but at the end of the day, he had 316 yards and 3 touchdowns. Baker Mayfield, 219 yards and 2 touchdowns and an interception. Nick Chubb, top performer, 124 yards and 2 touchdowns. I was ready to drop him after week 1 in my fantasy, and for some reason they kept him on my team after I thought I dropped him. Odell Beckham Jr., 74 yards and a touchdown. We should all celebrate and have a ticker tape parade outside because Odell Beckham Jr. committed some stats, but I don't think it's all of his fault. Cleveland did win this game. Joe Burrow continues to look like he is going to fit quite well in the NFL. And that's part of the problem sometimes is how good can a young quarterback be when he gets put on, the best quarterbacks in the draft genuinely go 1 through 5, or not 1 through 5, but the best quarterback usually goes number one, or the best player, and the best player then gets put on, in theory, the worst team. That was Cincinnati. Cincinnati was terrible last year. And now Joe Burrow is looking pretty good. The team's 0-2, but again, that you expect those type of adjustments from a young quarterback on a team like that. Another thing I want to make mention of is, actually, that was all I wanted to make mention of. Cleveland did win this game 35-30. They should have beat Cincinnati a lot more than that. But Joe Burrow looked good. He did outplay Baker Mayfield. But Mayfield technically had the better stat line because he didn't throw the ball 61 times. Because he has a good running back. I would like the Cleveland Browns to have a terrible running back. And again, that dual threat between Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb is very deadly, by the way. I would love for the Cleveland Browns to have a terrible running back and see what this team does, because I think this team would win 2 to 3 games without a running back. Speaking of running backs and bad news, Giants in Chicago against the Bears. Barkley was carted off in the second. I didn't see the actual, well, I went back and watched it. Barkley was carted off in the second quarter. Now everybody's looking around and they're like, oh, that's not good. Anytime a player gets carted off. But the Giants were especially panicking because he's supposed to be their golden boy. And I don't say this in a sarcastic manner, because I genuinely think that he is the guy for the Giants, and he has generational talent to be the best back in the league. News came out. Now, the intro on this video is going to say otherwise, but news just came out about an hour ago that Barkley did indeed tear his ACL and he is out for the season. So that is absolute terrible news. Someone like Saquon Barkley, that's even worse. They will not have him any longer. He only had 20 yards in the game. Obviously, he did get hurt. Jones had 241 yards and a pick. Trubisky, 190 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Montgomery did a little bit of everything in this game for Chicago. 82 yards rushing. He then had 3 receptions, 45 yards, and a touchdown receiving. The Bears won this game 17-13. The Giants had a drive at the end where they had a chance to put themselves ahead. And a completely missed ball, which was also an offensive pass interference in the last play of the game, would give the Bears the win. The Giants will then play San Francisco next week. They're playing a San Francisco team that literally went down before our very eyes this week. We'll get to that game in a minute. But the Giants are 0-2, and now they lose their star player, Saquon Barkley. And I'm talking star player. So all I have to do is have sympathy for the Giants, because that's just terrible. I mean, it's terrible for anyone, but man, the Giants need him. And Daniel Jones is still having rough adjustments in the Giants. Their offensive line has not played good at all. Doesn't give Jones the time. Barkley can't run. And it feels like New York football can't just catch a break ever. But that's that. Montgomery was, I guess you could say, the player of the game. Giants fall, and they're 0-2. Chicago gets a win against Detroit, and I believe, or they got a win last week. I believe the Bears are 2-0, and that is not cause for a celebration, but we'll see. Jaguars Titans. Obviously, this was the game that I watched. I'm a Titans fan. The thing with this game is there's no defense. I know Jacksonville has players that can explode. Jacksonville's one of those teams where they'll be 3rd and 9, and all of a sudden they'll get a 45-yard pass. I wouldn't say their offense is lethal, but it's like a time bomb. It can explode at any given second, and that's how I would say it. Tannehill had a fantastic game, and if there was anybody that needed it, it was Tannehill. We need a game where Tannehill goes crazy and Henry does not, because we need to prove to people that Tannehill is a legit quarterback. Still some things that need to be worked on. The offensive line needs to improve for the Titans a little bit, especially the pass protection is not as great as it needs to be. Pass rush, Jadeveon Clowney had some pushes in this game, but despite that, the pass rush was really non-existent. Christian Fulton got his first pick. It was a tipped pick. Tannehill had 239 yards, 4 touchdowns. Minshew, despite the 2 interceptions, also had a good stat line. 339 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 picks. The 1 pick being early to Fulton, and the end being the one that iced the game. Josh Robinson, who is now the running back for Jacksonville after Fournette's departure. He had a great game, 102 yards and a touchdown. DJ Chark, 4 receptions, 84 yards. Derrick Henry looked like he wasn't getting much room early, but at the end of the day, he did finish with 84 yards. Jonnu Smith, the top receiver for Tennessee, 4 receptions, 84 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jonnu Smith is slowly coming along as a very solid option as a tight end in the NFL. The Titans would have Gostkowski miss an extra point. However, similar to last week, he would hit the game winner or, well, the game-winning points. 33-30, the Titans would beat the Jaguars. Also, Minshew had a chance at a final drive that was ended very shortly with Harold Landry getting a tipped interception. Titans win. They will go on to play Minnesota. It's not really much of a game, but it's more so the news behind it. That is the San Francisco 49ers coming to MetLife Stadium to take on the New York Jets. What an abysmal performance from the New York Jets. You know what? And it really is sad because the 49ers literally had nobody out there. Garoppolo had a stat line of 131 yards and 2 touchdowns. He got hurt. Mostert had 92 yards and a touchdown. He got hurt. Darnold had 179 yards and a touchdown. Tons of injuries. Nick Bosa, they fear his ACL could be torn. Sherman didn't play this game to begin with. Who else didn't play? Or who else got hurt? Garoppolo. Garoppolo didn't look like an injury that was going to be as serious. But the 49ers were missing half of their defense and half of their key players in this game. And yet they still smacked the crap out of the Jets 31-13. The New York Jets are the New York Jets. The less you expect of them, the better off you'll be. And I think that's a motto that more people need to follow, because anytime you get excited about New York football, I think the Jets are in a worse position than the Giants are. I'll tell you that. The Giants at least give you some hope during their games that they are actually in the game, where the Jets just, they were better off not showing up for this game. This was absolutely terrible. You got bodied by a team that had half their players on the bench. You're bad. Jets lose, they go, I don't know who the Jets play next. Doesn't really matter, they'll probably lose. Again, don't take these things that I say personal. It's all for entertainment purposes. Falcons, Cowboys. The longer this game went on, well, I didn't even watch this game. It's just a stat sheet. I told in my preview and predictions, I said that Atlanta and Dallas were going to have a game where it was no defense and just scoring, and whoever got the last points would win. And man, was I right this morning. Falcons, Cowboys in Dallas. Atlanta, great offense, no defense. Dallas, great offense, some defense. Matt Ryan had 273 yards for 4 touchdowns. Calvin Ridley is another good performer at offense as well. 7 receptions, 109 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Dak Prescott put up some numbers yesterday. 450 yards and a touchdown. Zeke ran 89 yards and a touchdown. CeeDee Lamb, as a young player, had a nice performance. 6 receptions, 106 yards. The Cowboys were down 20 in this game, and I call this the Atlanta special. This is what Atlanta did in the Super Bowl. Well, it was much worse than the Super Bowl. They blew the lead. The Cowboys were allowed to come back, and the Cowboys hit a game-winning field goal as time expired to edge out the Falcons. 40-39, the Cowboys win. I don't really know how you even dissect this game. Do you give Atlanta props for staying tight with Dallas? I think you have to, well, Atlanta can't hold leads anyway. So what am I supposed to say? What am I supposed to say for that? Dallas wins. No idea where they go next week. Atlanta is now 0-2, if I'm correct. They lost. Who did Atlanta open up against? Was it New Orleans? I have no idea. Yeah, see, the longer the season goes on, the less I'm going to know about games previously played to an extent, because it just gets harder to keep track of. Anyway, Dallas wins. Next game was a complete blowout. Detroit going to Green Bay to take on the Packers. Matthew Stafford had 244 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Rodgers looked good, 240 yards and 2 touchdowns. Aaron Jones was the top performer of this game. He had some numbers. 168 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also caught 4 receptions for 68 yards and a touchdown receiving. The Lions should have never shown up. The Lions honestly have no business in this division. The team has so much work that needs to be done on defense and so much that needs to be changed. And sometimes I feel bad for Matthew Stafford because there's some offensive talent on this Lions team. But I can't sit here and tell you that I saw this game going differently. The Packers blow the roof off of, well, there's no roof on Lambeau Field, so how much of an idiot do I look? 42-21, the Packers beat the Lions. Aaron Jones will probably be the player of the day, or at least the NFC player of the week after this fantastic performance. The Lions, well, what do you expect? Next game, Minnesota and Indianapolis. The Colts are now 1-1 after losing to Jacksonville last week. The Titans have sole lead of the division. It's only 2 weeks into the season. Kirk Cousins looked absolutely awful yesterday. 113 yards and 3 interceptions. Cook had 63 yards and 214 yards, touchdown and a pick. Jonathan Taylor, we talk about the Colts' depth at run game, 101 yards and a touchdown. Ali Cox, 5 receptions, 111 yards. The Colts beat the Vikings 28-11. The Vikings look pretty, honestly, they had a good game last week against Green Bay, but they look terrible against the Colts. So hopefully that was the way of softening up, because we will be having a game with Minnesota next week. Very hard to predict Minnesota. You know, the Bears seem to be getting better. The Lions just don't exist. Green Bay obviously is the forefront of that division. Anybody who tells me differently, well, okay. Colts win. Phillip Rivers. I need to see, I need a larger scale. I need more quantity of the Phillip Rivers game before I can sit here and tell you how I feel about him as quarterback for the Colts. But this was a good showing, and it was a good start. Josh Allen. Now, Buffalo hasn't really played anybody yet. They played the Jets last week. Then they played Miami. Miami's better than the Jets, obviously. But Josh Allen is really on a mission this year. This Bills team looks great. They really do. Josh Allen had an amazing 417 touchdowns. 417 yards with 4 touchdowns. Stephon Diggs, another great game. 8 receptions, 153 yards, and a touchdown. Ryan Fitzpatrick had 328 yards, 2 touchdowns, but he missed a lot of passes. And, of course, Mike Gesicki for the Dolphins, 8 receptions, 130 yards, and a touchdown. When it was all said and done, despite the dominating performance, it was a 3-point game. The Bills edged out Miami 31-28 to get the win. Dolphins, I believe the Dolphins were on it, or had a chance to tie the game with a field goal, and they missed it. Or there was, I don't know, I would have to go back and look at that a lot closer before I can give anybody any insight on that. But again, Buffalo, I don't know, man. Buffalo looks good. Miami does not. So I don't know how much longer before it's to a time, but we'll find out in due time. Philadelphia Eagles, not off to a hot start this year. I can tell you that right now. They played the LA Rams and they got cooked. No pun intended. Jared Goff had a great game, 267 yards and 3 touchdowns. Henderson ran it well, 81 yards and a touchdown, and Kupp had 5 receptions for 81 yards. Carson Wentz's stat line was 242 yards, 2 interceptions, almost 20 missed passes. Sanders ran it well, 95 yards and a touchdown, and Deshaun Jackson had an okay game with 6 receptions and 64 yards. The Rams ripped the Eagles 37-19. My friend that was an Eagles fan, I believe next week they play, I think he said they play Cincinnati. So if they can't, listen, if, no disrespect because I like Joe Burrow, but if Philly can't beat Cincinnati next week, it's time to hit the panic button on the Philadelphia Eagles if you have not done so already. Speaking of injuries, Drew Lock got hurt. The Broncos like him a lot, and Drew Lock has shown some potential. The Broncos and Steelers in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, one of the best pass rushes / defenses in the league. Lock got hurt. Jeff Driscoll came in, if you guys know who that is. He came in for the injured Matthew Stafford in Detroit last year, and he did absolutely terrible. 256 yards, 2 touchdowns, which isn't bad, but he also threw a pick. Roethlisberger had 311 yards, 2 touchdowns, a pick. James Conner ran it well before he got hurt. Another person hurt. 106 yards and a touchdown, and Deontay Johnson, 8 receptions, 92 yards and a touchdown. When it was all said and done, this was a very close game, but Pittsburgh would get the win 26-21. Denver plays, I'm not sure who they play next week. But despite all that, it's interesting. I think that the Broncos are in a lot of trouble. If Lock's injury is anything major, they're in a lot of trouble. They have some new guys on offense that I think are good, but and I'm not saying that Drew Lock is the franchise guy for Denver, but I think that they definitely like him, and I think that there's been potential for him to be liked. But the Broncos are in trouble. But I gotta, you know what? Week 1 was a crap show on both games between Denver and Tennessee. And then yesterday they played Pittsburgh. So I need to see Denver go against a team that's average. Not saying Pittsburgh is this amazing team, but their defense is very hard to score against. Hopefully the Titans don't find that out the hard way in 2 weeks. Next game, Well, they played New Orleans last week, so was Tom Brady going to do much better this week? The Buccaneers did. Tom Brady, not so much, though. Panthers and Buccaneers NFC South matchup. Teddy Bridgewater, 367 yards. He did throw 2 interceptions. Christian McCaffrey, 59 yards, 2 touchdowns, was hurt in this game. Another person added to the long injury list. DJ Moore, 8 receptions, 120 yards. Tom Brady, 217 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Now, this is the type of game that I think 5 years ago, Tom Brady would have threw for 420 and 4 touchdowns and an interception, or no interception. Tom Brady has 3 picks on the year, which is not really Tom Brady-like. Leonard Fournette was great, 103 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Mike Evans looks back to shape after his abysmal performance against New Orleans. 7 receptions for 104 yards and a touchdown. When it was all said and done, Tampa Bay got the win, 31-17. I don't know how you guys feel about Tom Brady so far. Didn't look so hot last week. It didn't really look that great this week. Tampa Bay looked great. Tom Brady, not so much. But, you know, when you can run the ball like that, you don't have to look that great. Again, I need a bigger sample size. I said the same thing with Phillip Rivers. I need a bigger sample size before I can sit and dissect Tom Brady and Phillip Rivers. But I expect a little bit more from Tom Brady, especially on this team. The Washington football team, used to be known as the Redskins, were in Arizona to take on the Cardinals. Dwayne Haskins had 233 yards and a touchdown. TJ McLaurin, the top receiving target in Washington, had 7 receptions, 125 yards, and a touchdown. Kyler Murray was great, 286 yards, a touchdown, threw an interception. He also ran for a touchdown as well. Kenyon Drake, 86 yards on the ground. DeAndre Hopkins, 8 receptions, 68 yards, and a touchdown. I did not look up any defensive stats, so I'm not sure off the top of my head where exactly Chase Young and the Redskins, or excuse me, the football team ranked on defense. But Arizona did get this one, 30-15. Kyler Murray looks great. I can't wait to see someone like Kyler Murray develop. I really like his game, and he's one person that I'm a big fan of in the NFL. Chiefs and Chargers. Chiefs and Chargers. This game took longer than 60 minutes. And that was because Justin Herbert was put in the game. Patrick Mahomes had 302 yards and 2 touchdowns. Missed a lot of passes. He did rush for 54 on the ground. Tyreek Hill had a good game. 5 receptions, 99 yards, and a touchdown. Justin Herbert, 311 yards, a touchdown, and interception. He made his NFL debut yesterday, and he did great. The ending of this game, or excuse me, I got some more stats. Austin Eckler, 93 yards on the ground. Keenan Allen, 7 receptions, 96 yards. The game-winning field goal was from Harrison Butker from 58 yards out in overtime, which gave the Chiefs the win, 23-20. Chargers have nothing to be disappointed of. I can tell you that right now. What's his name looks great. Justin Herbert looks great. And I think that, in all honesty, he's going to be the guy going forward. Harrison Butker hit literally 3 58-yard field goals in a row. Or 2. And I was like, because I watched the end of this game, and I was like, if he misses that third one because of the timeouts, I hate how the teams do the icing timeouts before field goals. If he misses that third one, I would just have genuine sympathy because he's a beast, as one of the best kickers in the league. But Kansas City did get the win, 23. Baltimore and Houston. This should have been a better game than it was, but it didn't plan out that way. Lamar Jackson had 204 yards and a touchdown. Deshaun Watson, 275 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Brandon Cooks was a top game receiver with 5 receptions and 95 yards. And Lamar also had 54 yards on the ground as well. Not too many stat lines in this game, but despite all of that, the game was dominated by Baltimore. Baltimore did win the game 33-16. I don't know where either team goes next week, but I can tell you this, Houston definitely misses DeAndre Hopkins. But more so than missing DeAndre Hopkins, I think Houston is in for a long season. I said this prior to the season happening. I said that I thought that Houston was going to have a really rough season, and I still stick to that. I think Jacksonville will finish with a better record than Houston will. They might. And I know that some people are going to say that that's quite a gamble, but I would not be surprised to see something like that happen. Baltimore 33-16. Final game of your NFL Sunday. Oh my goodness. I didn't watch the first half. I was doing other things. Sunday Night Football, and they put it there for a reason. The Patriots and the Seahawks in Seattle. Let me tell you something. Obviously, Russell Wilson's great. We know that. But Cam Newton is really looking like a star right now for the New England Patriots. Okay. Cam Newton had a fantastic 397 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. He also rushed for 47 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. New England has not had a mobile quarterback in a long time. And I think that's one of the things that they really will appreciate with Cam Newton is his ability to run the football, especially on the goal line. Cam Newton had 3 touchdowns, 2 rushing, 1 passing. Edelman had a fantastic game, 8 receptions for 179 yards. Russell Wilson, again, what can you say about Russell Wilson that hasn't already been said? 288 yards, 5 touchdowns, and an interception. Chris Carson ran for 72 yards. DK Metcalf was getting into it with Stephon Gilmore throughout the game. Despite that, though, it looks like he may have won his battle. He had 4 receptions, 92 yards, and a touchdown. When it was all said and done, Seattle won this game 35-30, but damn, New England played one of the best teams in the league, and Cam Newton stepped up to the plate. Julian Edelman stepped up to the plate. I don't know what their rushing stats were. I don't think there was really any run game for, excuse me, what was I going to say? New England. But despite that, this was a great game. This might be one of those games I go back and watch the highlights a little bit closer. But that was your NFL. New Orleans and Las Vegas tonight wraps up your week 2 of the NFL weekend. I appreciate everybody for always watching. Continue to stay safe.